All right, everybody, welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about your thoughts, emotions, and feelings. So let's get into this. Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark DeJesus. I am your brother from another mother, bringing you insights along the way. This is the Healing and Freedom Journey. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, you've arrived at a great place. Let me ask you the question. Have you been helped in your life to deal with your thoughts, your emotions, and your feelings? Many people that I talk to have said, you know what, I haven't had a whole lot of training and help in navigating through thoughts, feelings, and emotions when this is stuff that you deal with all day long, whether you want to or not. For some people, they even hear of this topic and they get a little anxious. They feel awkward because they haven't had a lot of training in this area. They haven't a lot of equipping and how to navigate through this. So I want to give you a couple simple things that I have found to be helpful for my journey that I pray will be helpful for yours when it comes to relating to these three areas of your life that are happening all the time. The first thing we have to understand is thoughts and emotions. There is a very tight connection here, and I'll tell you why. Thoughts and emotions are connected together. Some people say, you know, I'm not very emotional. That's actually incorrect, and I'll tell you why. Every thought that we have has a corresponding emotion connected to it. We think of a thought as something that is a piece of information, some kind of knowledge, or some kind of sentence, right? And there's an emotion that connects to it. This is why we are not robots, that we think and we also have emotional connections. Now, the emotion is the body's response. Now, many of you have experienced this where sometimes you'll feel an emotion and you're like, I don't know what's going on, right? Your body's responding to something, then a thought kind of bubbles up from it, right? So these two here, they work very tightly together. And many people try to separate it out. Like we try to have our rational brain and our emotional brain separated out. And while they do have separate regions in the brain, these things are happening together. So we get very frustrated, right? You have certain emotions, you go, stop thinking that way. Your rational brain's fighting with your emotional part of your brain, or your emotional brain is going, no, I want to do this. This is how I feel. And so you have to understand how these work together if we're going to have some progress here in the journey. Now, feelings. Let's talk about feelings. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. Feelings are the way that we interpret or give meaning to our emotional life. So your body's sending signals. Maybe anxious, maybe feeling a sense of anger, feeling a sense of maybe fatigue, and we're trying to interpret. And this right here is where a lot of us don't have good training. I know that for my life, I felt like I was all over the place with my emotions because stuff would hit me and I didn't know what to do. I would tend to drown in my emotions or suppress them and deny them, get away from them. I don't know how to deal with these kind of things, right? I go back and forth and back and forth. This is important because in the learning journey, we're going, how do I interpret this emotion? What kind of meaning do I give to this? It's the way that we relate to our thoughts, and this is where we need training. Feelings. I feel blank. So when we're living in life, we're coming out of this expressing how we're relating to the thoughts and emotions that are rising in. You know, the actual thoughts that we either hear in our thoughts or come up in our thoughts, the emotions connected to them. Now, keep in mind, many people are like, I'm not very emotional. It's just not true because emotions are what cause us to respond to our thoughts. Many thoughts pass right through and get very little attention unless there's an emotional response. So if I was to look at all the thoughts that you struggle with, wrestle with, battle with, they are thoughts that have an emotional response. You don't know how to interpret them. You don't know how to navigate through them. So we have to understand that we're taking thoughts and emotions and we're going, okay, what does this What does this mean? I feel sad. Now, I wrote over here a bunch of emotions that we could talk about and dive into. Now, when you look and do research, there's some that said historically there's 4 main emotions, some that said 5, some that said 6, some that said 7. Well, I put over here 7. The last one here was not included in the 6, and I think surprise was not included in the 5. Doesn't matter. But I found myself frustrated with that list. I added a few more that I think we need to expand. Now, some of you that struggle with naming your emotions, I feel blank. You may want to buy one of those emotional color wheels and start developing a vocabulary, because in learning how to work through thoughts, emotions, and feelings, we're developing what is often called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has to do with understanding, but also regulating your emotional world. There's more to that. It's also how you relate to others and so forth. I'm just talking about from a basic standpoint. You understand what you're feeling. You understand how to regulate it, how to relate to it in a healthy way. Because the end goal is sobriety. Not denying emotions, but not drowning in them. And in a lot of my teachings, that's what you'll hear me talk about. See it for what it is, and not get lost in it, but also not doing all this denial stuff that many of us, can fall into. So you see here the 7 at the top: happiness, surprise, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and then those who have a list of 7, they add in contempt. Have you been able to identify, you know what, I'm feeling happy today? It's great. Do you know how to see it for what it is? Be able to connect to it. Are you able to understand surprise? That's your startle response. It can be good or bad. It could be surprise, happy birthday. Oh, this is great. It could be surprise. Oh, I got a check in the mail. It could be surprise, a friend showed up. Or surprise in the startle of maybe something bad happening or negative. Maybe you get in a car accident, or you hear the news of a loved one, right? That creates sadness. Do you know how to recognize, okay, I'm sad right now. I notice it. I see it. I don't have to feed it, but I can see it and let myself walk through it. Are you able to see in your life where fear has an effect? In the early days of my work, I spent a lot of time educating Christians on how much fear has actually been impacting how we relate to God and how we relate to the world, even though the Bible talks about over and over and over and over and over and over again to not be afraid. And because fear comes in many forms: anxiety, worry, rumination, dread, all those kinds of things. What about disgust? How many of you feel disgusted with yourself? Disgust is a very powerful emotion. It causes us to withdraw. Many people even withdraw from themselves because they're disgusted at where their life is at, what they're going through. You get disgusted with someone else, which then fuels anger. Anger is a very potent emotion. It can branch off in a bunch of different areas: envy, jealousy. It can fuel bitterness. It can fuel resentment. Then there's a sense of contempt. Contempt's interesting because contempt causes you to look down on someone. And I find a lot of people in their mental health journey carry a sense of self-disgust and self-contempt. They look down upon themselves. So in this world, why bother working through your emotions and your feelings? You're always tearing yourself apart. But I wanted to expand this list a bit better because we got to definitely bring in the power of love, especially the love of God. I teach so much on love and how God's love impacts our journey. We also can understand, I like this word appreciation. It connects to gratitude, because this is an emotion that when we feel it, we want to kind of settle in it. We want to kind of just have a mindful embrace of it to grow our appreciation. Excitement, this connects to our expression of joy, our engagement in activity, anticipation for good things happening. The emotion of contentment. I think that it's important to understand lust and how the Bible describes lust as desire that's been hijacked. And because the New Testament uses the term lust, but that same word is also in another case used as desire. Do we know how to, in our emotions, within our feelings, locate desire and be able to feed healthy desire in our life, as well as be aware of unhealthy desires, then there's a word that I think we really need to bring back into the Christian life and just even in human experience is the word awe. To have a sense of awe, to have wonder, to have a sense of discovery, have a sense of appreciation for something we're seeing. A lot of this can be attributed to the goodness and the glory of God. So as you listen to me go through those words, we could add plenty others. You can go online and find a bunch, right? We're learning how to see these emotions for what they're worth and to gain the value of learning. For example, when you're angry about something, a lot of times we just want the anger to go away. But many times there's things we can learn in seasons of anger or moments of anger, provided we don't just knee-jerk react to it and act on it. That's drowning in anger, right? When you drown in your anger, you let it control your life. When you deny it, you're afraid of that anger and you suppress it. Right? So we're neither denying nor drowning. Those two words are very, very important of what we're learning to do in our growth. Now, in order to deal with our emotions in a healthy way, you hear me talk about this a lot, we have to see our emotional life, our feelings, with the lens of compassionate grace. It must overarch everything that we're looking at. Because without this, you're going to lose context and your interpretation is going to go way off the rails. What I also find with people who don't interpret their world compassionately, over time, they'll end up taking out some of their difficult emotions. They'll end up taking it out on someone else. The pent-up anger, your fears, your sense of sadness, disgust, those things that you're struggling with, right? If compassionate grace isn't there, that stuff gets pent up within you, you'll end up taking it out on someone else. Now, another thing that will happen is if you don't see your emotions and feelings through compassionate grace, you're going to turn on yourself and you're now going to become an enemy of yourself. So now emotions get locked up inside of you and your inner world becomes very, very toxic. Compassion is always pointing us to kindness, patience, God's ability to receive us in the beloved. Grace is pointing us to the journey of being empowered by the work of Jesus Christ to walk a journey with God, and we're able to be empowered to work through all the ups and downs of life because you were never promised that everything's just going to be up and awesome. In fact, there are beautiful things we learn in the valleys, providing that we allow the lens of compassionate grace. Because when you do that, you begin to have a nurturing posture towards what you're feeling. Now, all of us have patterns of either denial or drowning that we have with our emotions. When you hear me talk about shame in my shame series, I talked about denial and drowning a lot. What's your typical response? What did you grow up with? Were your parents more in the denial place? Because people who are in denial, they can often be afraid of emotions. Previous generations that were like, you're too emotional. They were often afraid of emotions, so they would suppress it, push it down, and it would often come out in other areas. Maybe in addictions, or maybe in anger outbursts, or unproductive patterns down the road. A lot of OCDers have avoidance patterns. They drown in a certain thought that's got them stirred up emotionally. They'll drown in that, but they'll deny other things. So it goes like this. Mark, I think my salvation's in question. Have you learned how to connect to God's love for you? Yeah, God loves me, but it's my salvation issue. See, what I just practiced was a denial of the actual issue and a drowning into the obsessive issue. So that's why I have to do a lot of work in helping to calibrate our emotional response, because both of these take us out of sobriety, right? It's a big struggle for so many to know, here's what I'm feeling and here's what I think it means, here's how I relate to it. Compassionate grace settles the waters. It's okay, you're not okay. So you're angry right now. I spent most of my life trying to suppress anger and make it go away. Now I've learned that when I feel it, okay, the emotion's working through me, and I let it work through me because now I can learn things in that process, learn things about why I get angry, learn about how to relate to anger differently. Doesn't mean I act on it. When I say work through me, means I don't try to fuss over myself of trying to stop an emotion. And this is an important point. We cannot stop a thought and emotion from showing up, but we can learn how to respond in fruitful ways. We can learn how to respond to our thoughts in fruitful ways. So a lot of times we're afraid of this showing up. And this gives the unwanted emotions more power because we're afraid of them. What we need to learn is how they show up, and a lot of it has to do with interpretation. This is what I'm feeling, and this is why I think I'm feeling it. Many people get lost in their distortions when they're looking at how they feel. Many times we need to sit down with someone, because when I'll sit down with people and they'll say, this is what I'm feeling, this emotion I'm feeling, this is what it means, I go, your interpreter's off. You're interpreting your journey inaccurately. And that's what living outside of compassionate grace does, is it causes us to look at our thoughts and emotions with hostility, with inaccuracy. We put too much pressure on us. We start striving. So what I want to help you, encourage you in, is to not spend a lot of time escaping or fixating on trying to fix our emotions rapidly. Many times we feel an emotion, right? And we could spend a lot of time escaping our feelings or anxiously attempting to fix our feelings. We don't actually know what we are feeling. Mark, I'm angry. I got angry. It's like, wait. You understand, what's going on in your life? Compassionate grace slows things down and goes, it's okay that you're not okay right now. You don't have to act on this. You don't have to feed the emotion. But you may need to learn what it is you're feeling. And it may be as simple as, do you know how to name what you're feeling? I don't know, I'm just hurt, So in the healing journey, what I want to teach you and encourage you in is not to microscopically examine your emotions every 5 seconds, because that's what many people can fall into. We can get very neurotic in how we're examining our emotional state. Many of you have to actually starve the compulsion of checking how you feel every 5 minutes. So this is not a journey of checking. No. Something I want to make clear. We observe emotions and feelings over time. So it's like I've been noticing this week I've been a bit more sad. This is not, I'm sad, I'm happy, I don't, all throughout the day just hyper-analyzing. We have check-ins over time. I've been noticing, these past few days, here's what's been happening, right? This is an important, because otherwise we're going to be microscopically checking. And emotions were not meant to be observed from a hyper-analytic place. They need time to breathe. You need time to practice. You need time to live. The takeaway is we need to learn how to let emotions work through us. And you'll have to understand, what's your response to emotions? Do you tend to be denial? Suppress, avoid? Do you drown? Do you do a little bit of both? Both of these things do not let emotions work through you. So you may walk into a room and you may feel an anger rise up in you. Do you give yourself a moment to go, okay, I'm letting it work through. I'm upset right now. Do you give yourself a moment to let that anger work its way through, or a few moments? If you're anxious, do you let that work through you? If you feel startled, do you let it work through you? If you feel even an emotion of lust all of a sudden, or a forbidden attraction start to rise up, do you let it work through you, or do you compulsively? And a lot of people listening to this, you're very compulsive in how you respond to your emotions, so you never actually let them work through. That's why I talk about the gentle redirect. You can watch that in my other video, because it allows us, when you have those unwanted or struggling emotions, you can learn to gently redirect yourself to a new focus. But you have to have a mindset. Emotions are meant to work through us. Many of you are trying to stop them from even showing up. And then when they do show up, you're trying to get rid of them as quickly as you can. And that is making things worse. So this takes practice. But if you're compassionate and gracious with your journey, you're going to realize it's okay, I'm not okay right now. And now you're learning to see with a sober eye the emotions you're battling with versus getting locked into them like most of us do. We get so attached to our emotional ups and downs, they take us for a ride. And what I want to do is encourage you to learn to recalibrate those areas. Now, has this been a help to your life and to your journey? Which part was helpful for you? And I want to see what's been helpful and where I could go in future broadcasts. Do me a favor, go over to markdejesus.com and check out more materials on your healing and freedom journey. You can also check out my latest book, The OCD Healing Journey, available in all kinds of formats. I also have a healing and freedom community where I'm investing in the lives of people in a deeper way and having live Q&As and forum interaction and also access to lots of course materials. Click the like button and subscribe, and I appreciate all your support. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. This is your brother from another mother saying I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.